Hello everyone, and welcome to another Tea Break Talk with Cerebra. Today I'm joined by Dr Liz Halstead from University College in London, and Liz has been working on an exciting new study into sleep and children with neurodevelopmental conditions. So thanks for joining me today, Liz. Lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
And the point of these talks really is to catch up with lots of different people from within the charity and people that charity's working with on our research work and how that translates into our services, etc. So sleep is a core part of Cerebra's work in helping families with sleep problems. So can you just start off by telling us a little bit more about this new study?
Yeah, so this study is really exciting because it's in collaboration with Cerebra's sleep service, and what we've done is we have looked at the data that the sleep service has collected from parents and families who've come in and said, my child has a sleep problem, what can we do to help? So what we've done is we've actually had 650 children now, and we've got data on those, and we've been able to look at the different sleep problems that parents have reported, what they look like, and also more importantly we've also been able to see what parents are reporting as the main problems that they're experiencing it. So we're looking from very much a kind of family picture, and it's just really important because sleep is so important for functioning, for learning, and it impacts the whole family. So I think it's really important to kind of start to really think about what does sleep look like in these populations, and some work has been done on it, and we're sort of in the infancy of finding very clear profiles of sleep in a lot of conditions. But in terms of moving forward, I think it's really important that families start to know, what things to look out for and what can be done to manage these. So that's what we're doing, and we have looked at the data and we found some interesting things.
Yeah. So how long, over what sort of period did you collect the data?
So we have data from 2016 through to the beginning of last year, and so we have about 2 years worth of data, and then we've analysed it this year.
Yeah, so what were I know there's probably lots and lots of information in there to pull out, but what are the sort of the key points that you've found?
Yeah, so we did find a lot of interesting things, and I think that it's important to say that because sleep in this population is so new, all of these things that we found, we now need to start looking at what more we can do with them to look at them in more detail. But I think one way that we approached the data was to look at age differences, and we actually organised the data by key stage group ages, because the National Sleep Foundation have age related guidelines for sleep duration, and I know that it's quite stressful for families when, particularly if they have a child with neurodevelopmental conditions, often they don't quite fit into that, and there's no specific guidelines for this population. So it can be quite stressful for families, particularly if they've got siblings who, as we would say, are typically developing, and then another child with different sleep needs. How do you fit all of that into your family and routine? And so we looked at age, and I think one important thing that came out was that the age group of age between 7 and 11 were particularly high for sleep anxiety. So they had a lot of anxiety around sleep, which meant that they also had very high what we call sleep onset. So that's sort of the time that they're taking to fall asleep. They also were quite resistant to going to sleep. And they had much higher daytime fatigue. So the impact that their sort of differences in their sleep are having, they're impacting them during the day, essentially. Yeah. So I think that's something that we haven't really, we know that there's correlations between age and sleep, but I think that age group, there seems to be something in particular about that age group. And that's definitely an area that we want to kind of look at in future, and maybe target some interventional work for families and management of sleep in that age group.
That's really interesting, isn't it? And you know, the reasons why, isn't it? Why at that particular age, as you say, that these problems are more prevalent.
Yeah, and I think it's something to look at in the context of school and learning and the impact that that's having. Other things that we found, which I thought were really interesting, was we actually found that regardless of what diagnosis the child had, sensory, having a diagnosis of a sensory condition was very linked to problems falling asleep. So we looked at the different diagnostic groups, and we had about 50% had a primary diagnosis of autism, but actually that didn't matter so much. It was the sensory profiles and conditions that were impacting particularly children falling asleep. And I thought that was really interesting, because we have seen evidence before that is very linked, particularly in autism, to their sleep difficulties that they experience. But I think that that's something that needs to be looked at in more detail. The other thing that we thought was very interesting was melatonin. So 20% of children that came into the sleep service were on melatonin, and that was quite young. Some of these children were having melatonin quite young. The thing that came out in our data was that those children who were on melatonin fell asleep earlier than children that weren't. So that initially looks quite good, but then they were waking up a lot more, and actually waking up a lot earlier than other children. So in terms of looking at medication use in this population, again, we know from previous literature that this, you know, that children and adults with autism in particular, because that's been a group that's been sort of looked at the most, they might not be reacting to medication in the same way. And there's no clinical studies that really show the effectiveness and the long-term kind of outlook for this population in terms of taking medication. So I think that there is definitely a clear need to look at melatonin use in this population, and what that kind of really means, and if there's any, you know, downsides. For example, it might be that the child is going to bed a bit sooner, but they might not be sleeping then through the night, as you know, so that might cause a few problems for families.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? So it's great, isn't it, that this study is, you know, based at families' actual experiences of sleep with their child with a neurodevelopmental condition. So it's given you lots and lots of information about what's really going on, and not just, you know, a best guess at it. So what are the next steps? You know, you've obviously gathered a lot of information, a lot of data. So what's the next steps moving ahead with it?
Yeah, so the next steps are to make sure that this information that we have is relevant and kind of accessible to families. So one of the things that we were able to do in this study was to look at what were the biggest problems for families, and that is something that we're going to take forward and make sure then that we're addressing in terms of providing educational resources and management for families, for, you know, based on specific maybe diagnosis or conditions and age groups. And we're looking, because of COVID, you know, maybe the more traditional ways of you know, getting this information across aren't available to us. So we are looking at ways that families can access this information from home in a way that works for them. So I think longer term, we're looking at, you know, families being able to look up a sleep problem that they're experiencing, and then having the relevant information provided to them through various different means. So
yeah, I think it's probably fair to say, is it, that there's a bit of a lack of advice and information specifically for these families on their child's sleep.
Yeah, and we're working very closely with the sleep team at Cerebra to make sure that this is now all kind of connected and brought together, and it is available for families in a way that works for them, and we can provide them with the support that they need.
Fantastic. So a very worthwhile study then, Liz.
Hopefully, and hopefully for families, you know, bear with us as we might be looking at surveys and things through COVID, because we can't do some of the other work that we want to do. But I think, you know, big thank you to families, you know, who've provided this data, because we're now starting to see some areas that, you know, are really important and we can now look at in more detail.
Yeah, but as you say, sleep impacts everything, doesn't it? The whole of family life and education, everything. So
yeah, everything. Very clearly, I'm sure all families know that when their child isn't sleeping, they're not necessarily sleeping as well as they'd like. So yeah, I think it's really important to find out, you know, exactly what's happening in these populations so we can provide the right support for them.
Brilliant. So would it be okay if I come back to you throughout next year, Liz, just to catch up and see where the study is heading and what new developments there have been? I'm sure everybody'd love to sort of keep in touch and know what's going on.
Yeah, of course, that would be great. And I think hopefully by sort of summer of next year, we'll have some of these resources available. So it'd be really, really nice to sort of, you know, show you what we've done and you know, keep in touch.
That would be fantastic. And for anybody who is, any families who are struggling with sleep, and then do visit the Cerebra website. We've got a page on there about all of our resources where we can currently help you with sleep. We've got one-to-one sleep advice, and we've also got some fantastic sleep guides and tips that may be able to help you. So please do get in touch, because, you know, if we can help, we will. So that's worth having a look there. So thank you, Liz, for joining me.
No problem, thank you. And if anyone would like any more information, you know, they can contact me as well.
That would be great. We will we'll upload this video to our website and with an article, and we can put a link here for more information. That would be brilliant. So thank you again.
That'd be great.
It wouldn't be a tea break talk without saying cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, Liz, and I look forward to catching up with you soon. Take care.
Thank you.